All right, welcome to my basement for a lesson on order of operations. Before we start, we need to know that multiplication is repeated addition, and that will show us how come order of operations goes in the order that it does. And let's do the problem 3 times 2. We know that can be rewritten as 2 plus 2 plus 2, or 3 plus 3, but that's equal to 6. Okay, then if I put in 5 plus 3 times 2, I have to do this in a certain order. I can't add the 5 and the 3 first because 5 times 3, that's the repeated addition. So I have to do this addition before I can then add the 5 in with this other really it's addition. Okay, so that would be 5 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. And then when we have addition and subtraction, we have to go left to right. So 5 plus 2 is 7. Plus 2 is 9, plus this other 2 is 11. So we've gone left to right. Now, if I want to do the shortcut, because we don't want to have to add all those 2's together or any other thing that we can do shortcut multiplication, we're going to do the 3 times 2 first, which is 6, and then we're going to add the 5. So again, we're still going to get 11. We're going to get the same answer. This is just a shorter way to do it. We multiply before we add. Now, if division also happens before addition or subtraction as well. So if I have a problem and say that is 2 plus 6 divided by 2. Okay, on this one I have to do the division first. And I do that because it is an inverse operation of multiplication. So 3 times 2 equals 6, so 6 divided by 2 would equal this 3 here. So we have to do that first because it is essentially inverse multiplication, and multiplication is just shorthand addition. So then we add the 2 and we get 5. Now, when can we overrule this and say, okay, I want to add these first? Well, let's look at a situation. Let's say we have, we want to know how many mopeds we would need if we have 8 people, or 8, we'll say 8 kids, and let's see, so we need, how about 4 8 kids? If 6 kids can ride in pairs, and 2 have to ride alone. And we're going to say that the reason they have to ride alone is because their parents say you cannot let somebody ride on the back of your moped, or you cannot ride it. So in that case, we have 2 that have to be loners, and then the other ones can ride 2 to a moped. So in that case, okay, if we have 6 kids and we divide that by 2, we'll know how many mopeds we need for these 6 kids. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. Then we have the 2 that have to ride alone. So altogether, 2 plus 3, we need 5 mopeds. Now let's say we want to overrule that. Let's say that we want to, that these two kids right here, are going to break the rules. Okay, so if 2 break rules, and they decide they're going to go ahead and ride 2 to a moped too, and pair up on the moped. They're going to get in trouble by their parents, of course, if their parents find out, but we're going to go ahead and say that they've decided they're going to do that anyway and try to get away with it. And that's not a good thing to do, by the way. But if they do that, then we would say, okay, we've got to add this 2 and 6 first before we divide by 2, because we're going to pair them up and see how many mopeds we need. Well, there's 8 kids now. So now we want to do this addition first. So that's going to be 8 divided by 2. So now we only need 4 mopeds. So it changes the result. If you decide to add before you divide, you must have, if your problem needs that, you must have parentheses, and parentheses overrules the order of operations of addition, or multiplication, division, then addition and subtraction. So always parentheses overrule. So in our rules for order of operations, the very first thing is you have to do grouping symbols first, or you have to do parentheses first. Okay, and we'll talk about what a way to remember that in just a minute, so I'm just going to kind of underline the P. Okay, so now what comes next in order of operations? Well, we know that multiplication and division come before addition and subtraction, but there's a shorthand multiplication, and I'm sure you guys remember this because it hasn't been too long ago since we did this, but we know there's shorthand multiplication when we use powers. Okay, so exponents are repeated multiplication so that means we have to do exponents before we do any multiplication or division, okay, because that's a shorthand way to do multiplication. So if I do an example, 3 plus 6 times 2 to the third power, 3 plus 6 times 2 to the third power. Say, okay, well, what do we do first here? Well, we're going to have to do the 2 to the third because that means 2 times 2 times 2. So it's going to be 6 times 2 times 2 times 2, and then we'll add the 3. So 6 times 2 is 12, times 2 more is 24, times 2 more is 48, and then if we take 3 plus 48, we get 51. And when we do order of operations, we're going to say, okay, I'm going to do 3 plus 6 times 2 cubed. 2 cubed I can do in my head and say, well, that's 8. Then I'm going to multiply it by the 6. Then I'll add the 3. And make sure you're writing down these problems so you can have an idea in your notes, and you will get 51. Okay, so powers, or exponents, come after parentheses. So number 2 in order of operations will be exponents. And I'm going to underline the E there. And then the next thing that we do is multiplication. I need an L there. Multiplication and division. And those go together because I can do division before I do multiplication if it comes first, because we go from left to right. And so if the division comes before the multiplication, I have to do it first. And then, number 4 is going to be addition and subtraction. And also that goes from left to right. So we start on the left, move to the right, start on the left, move to the right for multiplication, division, and addition and subtraction. And some of you may remember the little device, mnemonic device to remember that. P for please, E for excuse, M for my, D for dear, and my dear goes together. Okay, my dear, left to right, because you might do division before multiplication, and then Aunt Sally. And again, left to right, subtraction might come before addition. It's just those two things, all left to right. So let's look at 2 more examples. Then I'll let you do some practice on your own. The next example we're going to do is 26 minus the quantity 7 times 2 plus 2. Okay, so on this one we got to do parentheses first. Now, the 7 times 2, if it wasn't in parentheses, we'd still do it first because we multiply before we add. But I'm going to go ahead and do 14, and now we've got 26 minus 14 plus 2. And then we go left to right. Start with 26, and then we subtract 14. But remember, we're not subtracting anymore. We're going to make that adding a negative. Okay? If you're going to get the same answer because 26 is bigger than the 14, and you're going to use the more holes than piles. Well, more piles than holes, my bad. 26 piles, 14 holes. So 26 and 14, negative 14, when I subtract I get 12, and 26 is bigger, so it's positive 12, and then plus this 2, so I get 14. You can go ahead and write down that example, and I'll pause the video so you can write that one down. And then our last example is 6 times negative 3, that's a times, plus 28 divided by 7 times 7 squared. Okay, now on this one we got to do, there's no parentheses, so the next thing we do is exponents. So I'm going to say 7 squared is 49. And so I have 6 times negative 3 plus 28 divided by 7 times 49. Oh, I'm sorry, that's supposed to be a 2. Okay, I thought that was too big. So we're going to do 2 squared, which is 4. Okay, so then I'm going to look at this and say, okay, I don't do the addition till last. I'm going to do this division and multiplication from left to right here. And I can also go ahead and do this since it's separate from these 3 over here, because I'll add last. So 6 times negative 3 is negative 18, plus 28 divided by 7 is 4. And then I'm going to multiply that times 4. And I have to go ahead and do that next, so that's 16. So I've got negative 18 plus 16. Holes, piles, fill up 16 of these holes. I have 2 holes left. I'm going to subtract, take that bigger sign, the one that appears to be bigger. Okay, I think that's it. So just make sure you remember your order of operations, and we'll go from there.